During his 4 months on the road escaping communist Hungary, artist Edward Hilbert kept a journal of cartoons detailing his remarkable adventure. The journal has been lost to time, but faithfully recreated over the years by Edward. This is the story of those 4 life-changing months. By 1956, years of Russian occupation had taken its toll on oppressed Hungary. A revolution was brewing.
This is how it started. The Hungarian kids from the university, they marched out front of the parliament and they starting to protesting about the regime.
They wanted the Russians out. They wanted to be free.
The police was placed on the rooftops with machine guns and they started to shooting the kids. From there on, the buildings collapsed, the people was bleeding all around, and it was terrible. I was lucky. I don't have to be over there at the parliament. I was home in my apartment, which was on the other side of the city in Buda side. A few days later, the tanks came over from that side and started to shooting. Instead of window, we had a large opening, a missing section of the wall. It was a beautiful view outside to the mountains. And then we decided we have to do something and we have to somehow get out from here.
Edward and Judy Hilbert were married just 3 months before the Hungarian Revolution began. They were young, in love, and eager to establish their own little place in the world.
We probably were ready to start our life, and we thought that anywhere could be better than here.
Opposing the communist regime was illegal, punishable by imprisonment and even death. But for the Hilberts, the oppression from an iron fist created for them few options. It was Edward, the imaginative and hardworking optimist, who realized that their chance to replace dehumanizing oppression with freedom was now. But it would be dangerous. To risk life for a dream would take courage, endurance, and a remarkable strength of character, uncommon in the average person.
When I've been 14, my uncle, who lived in New Jersey since the 1930s, they was coming to visiting us in Hungary. And he was telling us stories about United States.
Arriving with only a suitcase, George Lang worked his way up from immigrant sign painter to American movie theater owner. He told his loved ones back home in Budapest, opportunity and good fortune await in America for anyone willing to work hard and persevere.
For a Hungarian kid, 14-year-old kid, it was a big deal, okay? And it was opened up a dream for us.
In 1956, Edward Hilbert worked as a display director for a state-owned company, designing and building window displays with his inherent talent for design.
We was working, okay? We was working day and night.
By night, he designed brochures for other companies, built models, and drew animated cartoons for the motion picture company Szénási Muchkási.
So we didn't have any special discussion about what we were doing next day. Next day we were working again. That was our life.
Budapest in 1956, he recalled, was not a pleasant place to live. A person simply could not be independent, and Edward, who was known for jumping eagerly into new ideas, wanted to be his own boss.
I want to get out from Hungary. I want to get into the United States.
I don't know, you have to be strong sometimes in life. I was in a concentration camp in Austria with my mother for 9 months.
For Judy Hilbert, these tumultuous times and the robbery of her freedom brought back disturbing memories of childhood. Judy was 14 years old when she and her mother were taken by the Nazis. Ironically, it was in the loss of her freedom that Judy found a kind of independence and the strength to stand on her own 2 feet.
My mother died, but not in the camp. We came home and my mother died a week after.
The hardships Judy faced as a young teenager helped build in her the strength of a survivor, but it also made her prudent, reluctant to take chances, and especially cautious about taking the kind of risk her bright-eyed husband was looking at this very moment.
She was always cautious. She was more cautious than I ever been.
I didn't want to come out at the beginning because of the past, what I went through. I was very afraid to go and be on the road again.
She followed me because we were somehow part of each other. We both had a willingness for a change, something for the better.
So I called my father, and it made me feel very bad because he said, just go, go, go. Made me feel bad because I thought that my father wants me to go, so I go. And now that I have children, I understand how unselfish of him this decision was, because if he would say, no, don't go with him, stay here with me, I probably would. And my whole life would be different.
The newlyweds survived 1956 on the reassurance of a promise they made to each other, a decision bound by sacred commitment and blessed by their unselfish parents. If they could find a way to escape Hungary, they would run.
We had a landlord who we rented the apartment from. We get together with him. He had some different connections, and we was talking about with him how can we maybe get out from the country. Then 2-3 days later, he rang the bell in the morning. He said, I have a guy who drives a truck, and he willing to take us if you can move out from this apartment and he can move in. In that time, getting an apartment in Budapest, it was almost impossible. We made the decision real fast.
Imagine close your door and go, and you don't live there anymore. There was his friend whose apartment it was, his wife and his little girl, and us, 5 of us.
In a half an hour, we packed up, and we was on our way. The driver, he had to be either opportunist or idiot, because this wasn't a pleasure trip, it was a dangerous trip for him. If the Soviet soldiers find out what he is carrying on the truck beside the apples, he can get shot on the spot. No question asked, just shot.
They knew exactly what's going on. That's why they stopped every truck and every car.
Soviet soldiers was checking the papers of the driver. The little girl started to coughing. Her father held her hand in front of her mouth, tried to hold back the cough. That poor little girl get purple, get blue. They looked around the truck, they cannot see inside, behind the crates. Finally, we heard from outside, "Go ahead." Standing for 8 hours isn't a pleasure. When we finally get to the end point of the trip, they took the apple crates out from around us, and we was looking around. Finally, we realized it's a farmhouse, and we are standing right inside their backyard. The farmer himself had some connections with the border guard. This guy can help us through the border.
The weary travelers slept that night in a cow pen. The next night, the farmer escorted them in stealth through the dark, snow-covered forest.
The border guard changed, and the new group had one man who was working with this farmer.
The 5 refugees put their trust in a total stranger, a stranger who was now demanding all of their money and jewelry. He even took the Hilberts' newly fashioned gold wedding rings, compensation for what he called his services. The border dividing that part of Austria and Hungary zigzags so much that it's possible to leave and re-enter Hungary without even knowing it. Those cruel and despicable escorts who played such tricks left their victims destitute and heartbroken. The Hilberts could only hope their guide was leading them truthfully.
The farmer led us towards the border. Then he pointed out a light. He said, "See that light? Go over there and you will be in Austria. Just knock on the door and then you'll be all right." Okay. We started to walk through on the snowy, icy ground. It took us a good hour and a half. We get to that door which had the light on. We knocked on the door and we wait. And the deep man's voice screamed out from inside, "I'm coming," in Hungarian. And then he came out, and then in the same time we realized in the border line everybody talks both languages. So he was an Austrian, and he welcomed us, and in this time we was going to the horses stall for sleeping. That was a change. After it's not cows, it's horses in this time. Next morning, he showed us where is the bus stop to Vienna. He talked with the bus driver, and we get a free ride.
After all the dark Budapest and after all the fights and the things we went through, it was a different world.
We wind up in a city which was like a Christmas tree.
Everything was lighted and everything was trimmed, Christmas trees and everything. It was a very nice place.
And we felt completely different. We felt free. This was a feeling what you cannot explain before and after the border. Before you get there, you was constantly afraid what will happen next minute. As soon as we was over the border, we get a free feeling, nothing wrong can happen with you anymore.
How can you compare? They're shooting you in Budapest and they're good to you in Vienna. Putting you up, even if it's a school building, but put some food in your belly and give you some money to spend and give you clothes. How can you even compare? The Austrian was very good to us.
We was applying for a Canadian entrance. We was applying for an Australian entrance, just in case if it cannot get the Americans. But I was somehow determined, this is my way, and I want to go to America, and I'm not going nowhere else. This is where I started to do my drawings. The idea came over there in the gymnasium when I was dead bored from doing nothing. So I get some paper, sometimes just a bag, sometimes a paper what we was using for covering my sandwiches. I don't want to draw anything which was tragic. I'm trying to look everything from the fun side, because I figured, why do I see it tragically when I'm already from a free country? Doing the journal wasn't a reason for explaining the revolution. It was a reason to explaining my trip, coming out from Budapest and going to New York. One day we went back to the consulate just to checking how we're standing, and one of the clerk with a smiley face said, "Mr. and Mrs. Hilbert, you have the affidavit from your uncle who lives in New Jersey." That was what we waited for. Within 2 days, we get physical checkups once more, we get paperwork, we get the okay. We was ready to move.
They put us on the train, we'd be very happy. They said Bremerhaven, good.
train was loaded with people. It wasn't any empty seat inside, so I was standing mostly out on the perron of the railroad car, watching that gorgeous mountains and sceneries over there freeze to death.
It was a very, very compact train, but who cares? We went to Bremerhaven to a boat which takes us to America. I don't care if I would stand all the time. The ship, it's better not to talk about the ship.
Asking about condition of the ship, it was no condition. It was stinky, it was noisy from the motors of the ship engines. It was constant boom, 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 boom noise. We were separated on the boat. My wife was with other 500 women in one holding place. I was with 500 men in the other holding place.
So they didn't like the woman to go into the man's sleeping place and vice versa.
As soon as we passed the English Channel and passed white rocks of Dover, the boat started to jumping like crazy. And I went downstairs and I didn't see the sea. All what I did, I just felt it. It was January on the sea, and the January sea isn't friendly. Usually it's throwing any kind of size of boat up and down and sideways. Days was a long time for being seasick, and on the 12th days when the motor stopped and everything was quiet, then I figured we had to be somewhere close to America. So I climbed up on the steps. I met my wife on the deck of the ship. She looked good, I looked horrible. In the same time, we was hearing on the speakers of the boat the American anthem. And then we was looking to the other side of the boat, and we was seeing a gorgeous lady standing there. Then we know we are home. We are home now. This statue is something else to me. It's somehow it just put me in a different world, mentally and physically. That was the time when I felt we are in America, and I achieved my dream, what I started when I was 14-year-old. Okay, what else?
If I were going to take a trip like you did, 4 months on the road as a refugee, with just 1 or 2 bags of clothing, what would you advise?
Smile and don't take anything seriously. That's the only way how you can survive, because if you're starting to be serious, you feel everything twice as bad than it is, and that can kill you.